Okay, for those of you who are not listening to the Zoom call, the Zoom voice lady is terrifying as fuck. And thankfully, we are not going to have her on this new episode of The Creator's Conscience. But we do have one of my favorite new authors joining us today for seasons 2 of The Creator's Conscience. Please welcome Emery Lee.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I am so psyched to have you on here. So, your name is one that I've seen pop up a lot in authors on Twitter and everything. And Meet Cute Diary, which is a book that just came out this year. Honestly, I'm not that big of a rom-com person, but this is probably one of the most creative uses of rom-com that I have seen in ages. Because I don't read as much as I watch movies, I'm going to say this is up there with 500 Days of Summer and Scott Pilgrim versus the World as unique rom-com comparisons.
Well,
And we'll get right. Yeah, I bet you didn't hear that on your Kirkus Reviews or whatever the new review site is now. No, you've already seen what kind of show you're in for. So I want to get right into this. So Meet Cute Diary, obviously it's just this very sweet rom-com about a boy named Noah who starts up this blog for trans meet cutes. I had no idea what a meet cute was until I read this, but it's essentially like this kind of stories of trans people like meeting and falling in love and everything. And it's sort of presented as like this way to show that trans people can have love just as much as cis people, which great setup there. And then it gets exposed as a fraud, so Noah has to go out into the big bad world and find out what dating is really like. So I want to get straight into this. So how did you fall in love with storytelling, and what are your major influences for writing these kind of stories?
I feel like to a certain extent, we as people are constantly exposed to stories. Even before we're consciously aware that that's what we're doing, we are consuming stories between movies, TV shows, and just day to day people telling you things, and you're like, oh my god, this happened to me. And you're like, that's so exciting. I wish that happened to me. And so I think to a certain extent, there was just always this desire to have something cool happen in life. And you can't always make that happen for yourself. So for me, when I was younger and I was very much living in a parent controlled environment, it became a huge thing. Even before I realized I was writing books to write books, either in my head or literally on paper, it was just an escapist, how can I live and enjoy these things that I want to live and enjoy, but I can't actually make out of my own life at the moment. And so I remember the first stories I ever wrote were bad Charmed fan fiction, very, very loosely inspired. And that was just that.
Are we talking original series Charmed or reboot?
Yeah,
Charmed?
original series Charmed. When I was 8 or 9 years old, writing. I don't even know I was watching that stuff at 7, but of course that was my go-to show. Yeah, so that was basically where I started. I feel like people were always like, what book got you started on writing? And I'm like, I didn't even read back then. I didn't start reading until middle school. I was maybe 11 when I first actually enjoyed a book. So it was very much TV and occasionally movies that would just get me super inspired. I loved the Titanic, and not because of the romance. I just liked watching people die. So I was every time the romance, I would watch the movie and I would skip the romantic scenes so I could get to everyone freezing to death in the water. The part
it's a funny thing for me because I just recently really started appreciating Titanic as a movie, because I think there's two love stories going on in that. You have the love with Jack and Rose and everything, and that's really sweet. But also, what I really love about that is you get the love between James Cameron and shipwrecks. He's sort of inviting you into how the ship works, and for me, that's what really sets the movie apart from other stories that ripped off Titanic. But I think me and you are very similar in that kind of way, because I also did not read as much as a kid, as much as people would on Twitter have you believe that they live in houses made of libraries or whatever. For me, it was comic books, TV, movies especially, and I like to think that a great storyteller can recognize how all these different mediums are like differently written and sort of bring that together for the medium that they're doing. So obviously you went into books, but I can see a lot of like, see, some people describe my writing as this as well, and I've never gotten it. Has anyone ever described your writing as cinematic? See, I thought I was the only one. I have, to this day, I still have no fucking idea what it means. But one of my friends tried to explain it to me. It's like, so you know how sometimes in YA books you'll have like the big long monologue and then not much interaction with characters? She said like my work had like a lot of dialogue interaction, and I think that's the same with Meet Cute Diary. And there's even these little motifs throughout of the Meet Cute Diary blog itself with the like see for more comments and everything that just get more chaotic as the book goes on. And I can see that there is a filmmaker's touch in the way that you write, and I just find that very impressive.
Thank you. I mean, so I actually studied script writing and like TV production in college. And I actually, when I was a kid, when I was writing, I was also making movies. I used to make short films when I was like 7 or 8, which is ridiculous because they were so bad. And it was like the world's worst video camera, like 7,000 years old. And like, it was awful. But like, I do think to a certain extent that's always framed the way that I view a story, because even like, I don't plot, I just jump into a book. And it's because I just kind of roll with it the way that I would expect it to play out if I were to like turn on the TV and a show and a story would just kind of like unfold in front of me. So it's very like, I think in terms of like beats and pacing and that kind of stuff, I do tend to lean more into how would it progress if I was watching it on TV versus like, you know, how was it like literarily explored?
Yeah, I completely get that from the way you write, because sometimes what I have with rom-com stories when I'm reading them is that they all tend to fall into the kind of thing that I associate with comic books as well. What they are is escapist. They're like rainy afternoon, I want to feel good about myself kind of stories. They're breezy, you feel good when you're reading them, and then that's it pretty much. Like, and I've read some really good ones lately. This is the first one I feel that is aware that it's a rom-com and kind of plays with the tropes a little bit of it, even in the narrative stuff. So I said this to you a lot on Twitter as well. Like, this book is like Scream for rom-coms. And for those of you who have not seen Scream, first of all, go watch Scream, because there's a new one coming out in January and it's probably going to be sick. Scream is essentially, it's a slasher movie that knows it's a slasher movie and plays with all the tropes of a slasher movie, but yet always remembers that it has to be a great slasher movie in and of itself. The winking at the audience isn't enough. That's how you get Scary Movie, which is, you know, fine, fun little bit of parody film, but I think Scream is the better work of art there. And for Meet Cute Diary, that's essentially what I got there. And I remember a particular conversation with me and you where you said, and I quote, that Meet Cute Diary is only you using 5% of your power. So somehow you've become Shaggy in all this as well.
Yeah, I love that meme so much. Like I'm always using that meme for everything. Like,
it's just like, I mean, Meet Cute Diary, I think, is just so creative in the way that it tells its story. And if that's you only using 5% of your writing ability, then I can't wait to see what you do next.
like, you know, I feel like I have to explain that comment because I feel like it sounds almost like really like pretentious. To be like, oh, this book.
Look whose show you're on. I'm the king of pretentious.
It's just like, oh, like you enjoyed that book? Well, please, like, of course I can do like it 95 times better. But it's just, what it is it's like, so with Meet Cute Diary, I was very specifically on a quest to write a rom-com because publishing kept asking for rom-coms. And I was like, well, if publishing is going to keep asking for rom-coms, I wrote it during what was considered at the time, it was like the age of rom-coms. To All the Boys had just come out, like the movie, and everyone was like losing it. And then of course, you know, Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera came out with What If It's Us? And so of course everyone's losing it too because everyone loves those two authors. So it was like a huge time for rom-coms. And so everyone, like every agent was asking for a rom-com. And I'm sitting here like, God, I would love to write a rom-com, except like rom-coms do not look like me, and they don't have people who look like me or act like me or anything like that. Like if they're very like cis het white, like super like stereotypical. And so I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna write a rom-com. But then in trying to figure out what exactly it meant to write a true rom-com, because a lot of books with queer people of color, or like queer people or even people of color marketed as rom-coms, are contemporary books that have romantic elements. They're not actually true rom-coms, like fitting all the tropes and stuff. So on my quest to like find a story that fit those tropes, I essentially ended up like focusing on what are the rom-com beats, how do I like make this story a rom-com. And so that was like the whole point of the book. I didn't get the chance to explore a lot of things that I normally like to explore in my writing, like complex world building, like better prose, and like a lot of depth of character, because I was trying to focus on making the tropes like tropes, and like making them like big, and focusing on the tropes, like the humor of the book. So like ultimately, like I feel like this book really does deviate from a lot of my typical writing, in that it kind of focused on one element. When I can write more elements, I can make it better. And so I feel like but at the same time, it becomes a little less commercially marketable, which
is a phrase I fucking hate.
Like,
it's just like I love that there are writers like you out there thinking like that, because this demand for like books that feature characters that aren't cishet and white and everything. I see this a lot on Twitter. They often get so boxed into like a certain thing, and like if they're not that thing, then everyone has a fucking freak out on the discourse and everything. So I've tried to stay out of that. I'm looking for stories that really they take the advantage of their premise and their characters and do the best version of the story that can be told. And for Meet Cute Diary, I feel like that's the only way that story could be told. I can't see that working with any other type of character than someone like Noah, who I fucking like. Not gonna lie, I've seen some stuff where it's like you were talking about people telling you, oh, Noah's selfish or whatever. And to those people, I would like to say, have you ever met a fucking teenager? They are selfish assholes. But what is great about that, aside from all the stuff that Noah has of being a typical teenager, there's a real lack of innocence. Well, not lack of innocence. There's an innocence there where I felt that Noah was kind of thinking of love stories and like meeting somebody and dating in this very elevated fairy tale kind of, I want to meet Prince Charming and fall in love kind of thing. And what he finds out is that dating happens in like the least likely ways that you expect. So so in the book, he has this sort of fake relationship with this dude, Drew, to keep up with the whole Meet Cute Diary thing when it gets exposed as being fake. And then there's another relationship going on with this person, Devin, who goes through several pronouns in the story. I like that as a running motif because like it felt almost like a mini arc in and of itself. Like since the story kind of feels like it's about finding yourself in a way. And I love that it shows that romance is messy, quite literally in Devin's case, if we want to talk about how those two meet. I mean, I'll let you take the roads on that one.
Yeah, it's the meat puke. It's the had a whole promo campaign leading up to this book that was going to be, instead of Meet Cute Diary, it was just Meet Puke Diary. And I was like, but the problem is no one's going to get it. No one's going to get it yet. So
that sounds like the name of a Blink-182 album, if I'm honest.
Like, I was like, damn, this fits so well. Like, that would be like the perfect promo. But yeah, like, it was like just like the perfect. I wanted to like take the concept of like, can he have everything he wants in a romance, but have it all be wrong, but then therefore be more right? And so it was just like, well, how can I take a meet cute and ruin it? Perfect, a meet puke.
I mean, thankfully, that's not happened to me on a first date yet. Although I do live in Scotland, and I don't know if you've heard, but we have a bit of a drinking problem, so it's very possible. Although I don't think it was a while since I saw the part, but Devin wasn't sick because he was like drinking or anything, was it? It was just like an anxiety thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just anxiety.
I mean, it definitely grabs your attention, I'll say that much. Yeah, and all the other stuff with like Noah's family and the friendships that are kind of fading, that all felt so real to me. And I'm so glad to have found a YA book, like amongst others, like, but this is one that I can particularly note as it treats teens like teens. It doesn't treat them as these either perfect role models or like I don't know. Are you much of a comic book fan?
I don't do a lot of American comic books. I basically do like manga.
All
So
right, because I was gonna say it's kind of like how the recent Spider-Man movies have been, where they feel like it's like what an adult thinks a teenager is, with the sort of aw shucks gee whiz kind of attitude. And I mean, Noah's definitely not that, and that made him feel very real to me.
yeah, like I feel like it's actually something that's been coming up a lot on Twitter is people discussing like, how are teens supposed to look in books? And like, I just feel like there's been a lot of pressure around marginalized teen characters that they should be like really in the know and like they should be like educational to readers and like teach you how to like deal with oppression and like how to like balance all of these like complexities and stuff. And I'm like, look, marginalized teens are just as messy as white teens. I mean, maybe not just as messy, but pretty messy still.
Not as
Like,
messy as Devin.
I just, as a teenager and even as an adult, I mean, I'm 25 years old. I am not a saint. I'm not gonna like it's not like I walk around being self-aware at all times, only making the best decisions and like thinking everything through. Like people don't do that. So the idea that a 16-year-old is supposed to make the best choices at every turn and always know the right thing to say and always be polite. And I'm like, we just it's just not a thing that teens really do. And I feel like I just feel like for me it was kind of like, I had said something about this recently, but that I didn't write the book necessarily thinking like, how can I make him sound like a realistic teenager? I was writing the book at 22 thinking, I'll just make him sound like me because I'm close enough to that age. I'm sure that'll be okay. And so the number of people who've been like, he acts so young, like he acts like a 10-year-old, or like people who are like, oh my God, like, why is he so mature? Like, I'm just like, I think people forget that like everybody matures at a different rate. We all do things differently. We all think differently. And like being messy does not mean that he is inherently like, super immature or super like, I don't know, like the idea that the fact that he curses doesn't make him a 20-year-old, and the fact that he makes bad decisions doesn't make him 12. Like these are just all things that happen for people at different ages, and like it has nothing to do with it.
That still happens to me, and I'm 25 as well. Just look on any Twitter discussion, and you'll see there are a lot of adults who are extremely immature. Okay, that's probably the last time I'll roast Twitter discourse for this. I don't want to get murdered, but I genuinely love that because specifically something I do want to bring up is the friendship between Noah and Becca, because that was honestly, it was kind of very accurate to a friendship that I kind of had, where you feel like you're talking so much about yourself that you're not really getting your friend get as much as they want in, and that kind of has a way of wrecking the friendship without ever saying it. But it's a difficult thing to process because when you're you think about when you're talking with your friends, what do you have to talk about? Like it can be hard even in real life to sort of balance that talking about yourself and talking about their life. And the struggle Noah goes through in this felt very real. Like I've had friends who I've lost because of that kind of thing. And even the relationship with like Noah's brother, who I'm blanking on his name at the minute actually, but Brian, yeah, that's it, who's dating someone who Noah just does not like at all, which was very fun. I could imagine if like this was a movie or something, you would get like a really funny comedic character actor to play that part and just like really play it up. And even on that, I also said this to you on Twitter a while ago, I don't know if you'll remember, but I feel this story would work really well as a stage musical.
Yes, you did say that, yes.
And the reason I think that is not just because I'm obsessed with Dear Evan Hansen at the moment, but the way the story kind of goes with this narrative thing of fairy tale romance is being elevated. Musicals already have that kind of elevated reality to them anyway. So I could imagine like even like earlier bits in the story, Noah feeling sorry for himself, him singing like this overly pretentious emotional ballad about the Meet Cute Diary. And then like it's sort of progressing later on, maybe getting more confident or something. If you could get like a really cool band or artist to compose for it, Meet Me at the Altar or something like that. I could see this making a really cool musical, because I'm not quite sure I could see it as like a TV show or a movie. I think it lends itself to the way musicals are done.
I can see it when you said that. I was like, I honestly, I mean, I also have a love for musicals, so I feel like there's definitely probably some of that chaotic energy that I naturally infuse into things without even thinking about it. But I can definitely see it as a musical. I can also see it as like a movie, but I would see it as like a Netflix kind of movie, like one of those like, like, I don't know, like hour and a half, like kind of cutesy rom-com movies. But yeah, I can definitely see the stage musical thing. Like, I feel like that would be really, I think it'd be really funny. And like, God, I feel like Devin, like, I just think the picture of the meat puke scene, like on stage, that would just be so, oh my God.
Oh, I mean,
like Legally Blonde, the musical energy, but like.
I mean, do you remember the stories of the cast of Glee having to use cold vegetable soup to resemble puke? I don't want to imagine that on stage. Those poor actors. You're gonna have to get some method fucking actors to deal with that. But yeah, it would work either way, I feel. But like, musical is just for some reason where my mind went to when I was thinking of it, and thematically, there was something really interesting that I got into it, and I took note of this today just so I could talk about it. If I can find my fucking photos. All right. So there's this one line where it's like a meet cute, only one that's way less straightforward than all those love stories led me to believe. I love lines like that sort of sum up what the entire story is about. Because as I was reading it, I'm thinking, okay, is this going to be a story where it's like, okay, you think of love as a sort of big fairy tale thing, and then your real thing ends up being something that you don't expect, and it challenges what you view as a romance. And I'm glad it went there. I'm glad it didn't try to pull an M. Night Shyamalan on me and twist it or anything. It went for the ending that I thought it would go for and did it well. And specifically, and even after that, sometimes the real meet cutes are the friends we make along the way, or something corny like that. That is a beautifully self-aware line that it shows to me that you're this kind of author who is using tropes in a way that knows that they're tropes, elevates them, and does something completely unique with them. Like, if there's ever another story like this, I'm going to be thinking, oh, it's like Meet Cute Diary, and I've never seen a rom-com do that kind of thing, even in the ones I love, like 500 Days of Summer, which is like analyzing the toxicity of how a relationship can be, or I still consider Scott Pilgrim a rom-com just because I'm a nerd. But I feel it's in the path with like unique rom-coms that I would come back to every now and then. Sadly, I've not seen the book anywhere in Scottish bookstores, but I do have a copy on iBooks just so I could read it when I was traveling abroad. So, like, thematically, did you want to go for something that was a bit, like, above what you see in rom-coms, or did the story just end up that way?
I knew immediately that I couldn't write, like, I can't do normal, and I tell people that, like, all the time. Like, I can't do normal. So whatever is supposed to happen, it's not going to happen that way. Like, it just doesn't work for me. So I knew immediately that I was going to have to play with things and make them at least a little bit wonky. Otherwise, I was going to get bored. And so I knew that Drew was I knew that I wanted Noah to have to go through a relationship that wouldn't be his happily ever after. I like the idea that he would have because in reality, I feel like most people, we don't date and marry, one person in high school. It's like you go through however many people before you find somebody. And so I wanted to kind of like show the reality of like your initial relationship or how the relationship starts is not necessarily how it's going to end. And so I knew immediately that I wanted to do that. And I knew that I wanted to do this kind of like meta commentary as far as breaking up like the 12 steps and like what Noah perceives as romance and how like what we're conditioned to think, like this is how, romances play out based on every book and movie and whatever in history. Like that's not necessarily true. I did not know where exactly the story was going to end when I started though. It kind of spiraled.
Yeah, because I have a philosophy that when I'm writing great stories, they kind of have this way of telling you how they want to be written. So, like, I started writing a thing 4 years ago that was a portal fantasy, and now it's an 80s road trip adventure. And I didn't plan that. That's just the way the story was telling me to write it. So I'm curious about like your planning process. You say you just kind of went along with it, but like, see, something I do when I'm writing out a story is that I'll write out all the characters, but before writing a synopsis or anything like that, because I know those always change during writing things, I lay out thematically what I want the story to do, and then kind of just rely on my instincts to get me there in the end, no matter how long the writing takes. I don't understand writers who could churn out books like within a year. It took me 4 years to write one fucking middle grade story. If you have any tips for that, please fucking let me know.
So yeah, I mean, well, Meet Cute Diary took me 11 days.
11 days. Okay. All right. Is it Red Bull, Rockstar, Monster? What am I missing here?
It's literally ADHD was all that got me going. I was trying to explain this to a friend the other day because they were basically talking about like, oh, well, like I can take this draft slow. Like, taking a draft slow is good because it gives you the time to like really figure out what you're doing with it, blah, blah, blah. I can't take a draft slow because I get bored and then I won't finish it. So like the only way I can convince myself to finish a book is if I churn it out really fucking fast, and like the faster the better. So for this book, it was actually one of 2 NaNoWriMo novels. So I had 1 month to write 2 books. So I tried to finish it in 11 days, but it basically started, usually what I start off with when I go to draft is a pitch, like a Twitter-sized pitch. And that's because I used to write my books with the intention to pitch them in pitch contests before I got an agent. And so I don't remember exactly what the pitch was for Meet Cute Diary, but it was basically something like, when trans boy Noah's blog gets attacked by an internet troll, he has to like, figure out if like he's okay with love going off the pages. I don't know, something like weird like that. And so basically that's the heart of the story. Like, it's not necessarily the message, but it's the thing I try to keep in mind as I'm writing. Other than that, I tend to just jump into it. For this one, I had the pitch, I had the 12 steps. And I think that was pretty much it. I think I had like Noah and like Brian as like people, like, and then everything else was like, we'll see what happens. Like, well, like most of the time I don't even know like characters' names until they get introduced in the story. And like the moment they get introduced, I'm like scrolling through Google, like, give me a name, someone give me a name. Like, I think I knew that I wanted to have a meet puke. I think that was something in my mind around the time I started, but that was pretty much it. Oh, and the ice cream shop scene at the beginning. That was it.
I mean, I can imagine the meet puke scene being like, that's the money shot in the trailer. I mean, not so much for Noah, but like for the people who watch that and think, oh, that looks hilarious. I'll set aside my Sunday afternoon to watch that on Netflix or Disney Plus or wherever the hell it ends up. And there's too many fucking streaming services.
There's so way too many.
All right. And there was also another line that I think kind of sums up, I mean, I could be completely wrong on this, but I think this sums up kind of your writing process. That'd be your book coming out of the closet, but with a literal closet involved. Because you seem like, I mean, I've noticed this a lot with neurodivergent writers, like, because I'm one myself. We sort of look at stories differently than other people do. And like, that's not a disadvantage or anything. That's actually, I consider that a massive advantage, because you see things that like other readers or writers might not pick up on, and it gives you like this unique perspective on stuff. And that coming out of the closet, but with a little closet involved line, that told me, okay, this author is very self-aware. This author's very funny. Like, I could see that thing being like an SNL sketch for like a fake movie trailer or something like that. And those are the kind of little details that I really love in writing. So, I mean, props to you for pulling that off.
Thank you. I'll be honest, before I wrote Meet Cute Diary, I used to tell everybody, y'all, I'm literally not funny. Like, I'm not funny at all. And like, I don't know how you want me to write like a rom-com, but I'm not funny. And so like, and then I remember I finished writing Meet Cute Diary, and I was like reading it back over, and I was like, oh shit, I'm funny.
Well, I'm a stand-up comedian as well, so we're right there.
I feel like part of it, and I think something that a problem that I have with a lot of Western media is that it tends to take itself a little too seriously. And like, that's why I love comedy, because I feel like, obviously comedy is not taking itself seriously, but I feel like with a lot of other genres, there's just like this, like a lot of like, especially things that have anything like like social commentary or like, you know, emotional like whirlwinds or anything to say. I feel like a lot of them are they take themselves very seriously. Meanwhile, I watch a lot of anime, and anime does not take itself seriously at all. Like everything is tongue in cheek. It'll be like someone just got murdered and then they're making like a bad reference to like some like 80s movies, and you're like, what the fuck are you doing? Like it's absurdity. And so I think seeing the difference, like the discrepancy between like those two mediums was part of where I kind of came up with like, okay, fuck it. Like, I'm gonna just write like whatever comes to my mind, like whatever like dumbass like side quest my brain goes off on that's ending up on the page, and we'll just edit out anything that doesn't work.
Yeah, that's funny you say that, because I've always considered comedy as just like it's tragedy turned on its head. And you can kind of see that here. I mean, I could imagine another version of the story where it's not funny and it's like a serious drama and everything, and like really going for the whole what love really means, and probably directed by like fucking David Fincher or some shit, getting all the Oscar nominations and everything. I mean, who knows? This might get Oscar nominations if it got made into a movie. I'm not the Academy. Who knows? But it's kind of similar with horror as well. Like horror takes a lot of tropes and kind of shows the ridiculous nature of them, but still tells a really familiar story. With comedy, it's a very similar thing. And this book's just really funny. Like there's a lot of moments in it where it's like, yeah, I've been to that situation before. I've been to that kind of house party. I've met someone that awkwardly. I've tried to get a job. I've had to pluck up the courage to ask my mom for more money. And it's all just written in this very funny, self-aware way. And even though Noah does act pretty selfish in some of these scenes, I think that adds to the perspective, because let's be honest, if you're a broke teenager and you are needing money and you know your mom is going to lend you money if you ask nicely enough, are you really going to go about it in a way that Noah doesn't? Like, you're going to straight up ask, like, Mom, can I have some more money, please? And there's a beautiful kind of tragedy in that, but because it's a comedy, it's turned on its head and it becomes funny and relatable. So with that, is comedy something you could see yourself like going into, like writing, I don't know, sitcoms or comedy movies or anything like that?
It's really funny. I actually wrote a sitcom in college because we had an assignment where we had a screenwriting class. It was basically everybody had to write a pilot script for a show, and whichever pilot was chosen by the class, everyone would have to write like an episode of that show. And mine was a sitcom about like a convenience store or something. I don't remember what exactly it was about, but it was a sitcom. And I don't know why I wrote a sitcom, because I don't write comedy. I didn't write comedy back then. I was like, I hate comedy. I can't write comedy. And of course I wrote a sitcom. But so I wouldn't say no, but I feel like my type of humor is very like The Good Place, like where it's like it's very like it's dark humor usually, and it's very like, I feel like it's like a marginalized thing that we're so used to having things go shitty that we just grow like humor out of it. And I don't know, maybe it's also just like a living in like 2021 thing, like, you know, the world has been shit for a very long time and we just find humor in all of it. But I feel like most of the time when I write something like funny, it just ends up being, well, I don't want to take this seriously, so I'm gonna just turn it into a joke. That's great.
And that also throws into the face that I see. I mean, I see this a lot as a comedian. People assume that queer people are humorless and they can't take a joke and everything. But like, literally, we make jokes out of everything. Like, one of the things I have in my stand-up is companies putting up rainbow flags during June. It's about as fucking effective as a caution wet floor sign after a typhoon. And it's like, we notice all these things and we make light of them because like humor is always how you cope with internal struggles and that. And I feel that a lot with Noah, because once you really strip down his arc, what he's going through is like going to put a lot of pressure on him, like going to a new school, trying to find a panic last minute relationship to save a blog, the blog being destroyed by trolls and stuff online, and people who are like, oh yeah, we found out one bad thing about this, it's unproven but we're running with it, and if you follow this then you're dead to me, which is sadly a lot of what I see on Twitter. But the way it's kind of played humorously, that I think is what makes it more accessible, and therefore I'm not sure if it would be as effective if it was a straight up drama.
I mean, I think the thing too is like, so I have been smeared online several times, previously on Tumblr and now on Twitter. And so like I think people see it as like not this big of a deal. Like, oh, it's the internet, log off. Which, like, you can log off, but it's still traumatizing. Like, I really do, like, it really is traumatizing to go through that. And I think the idea that, like, it's a serious thing is something that a lot of people don't get, which is why I felt like the best way to, like, kind of convey that experience was just through humor. Because in reality, it's like, you go through it, but it's so inconsequential to most people that, like, at the end of the day, all you can do is laugh it off, and just kind of move on. And so I feel like it was very much like that was my almost like coping with like how much I hate internet drama and how much I hate the way people act on the internet. I was like, well, whatever, we're just gonna turn it into a joke and we're all just gonna laugh at it. We're just gonna laugh at everything, we're gonna laugh at people, and we move on. So yeah, I agree. I think like I just in general, I think there's a lot of stuff that like, and I think it happens a lot, like you were saying with queer people, where people think that we're like humorless because sometimes like, someone will mess up your pronouns and all of a sudden you're like furious or you're like crying and people are like, oh my God, like you can't, you just, you're so sensitive. And it's like, well, we're not sensitive. It's that we, deal with so much every day that like, easy things can break us. But at the same time, I also think that's why it's so important for us to learn how to laugh at those things, because, sometimes it's all we have. And that's how we can like, I feel like that's how we can like also like share these things with each other in like a way that's kind of like a cautionary tale, like, be careful out there, but also that isn't necessarily going to trigger everybody who picks up your book.
Yeah, and it's like, I see that thing going on online, like, queer people are humorless, but in reality, I think it's like, for the most part, I love a lot of cis comedians, but they always rely on that one stupid attack helicopter joke. And I've had that joke told to me so many times, I'm surprised Elon Musk isn't making it a reality. Like, it's like I could legit imagine a future being where you can upload your gender into an attack helicopter and so many cis folk will just jump on it, not realizing that they're just a part of the joke. Like, I have a bit in my stand-up that goes into that, but I think it does really work for Meet Cute Diary because, like I said, I can't imagine this working as anything but a rom-com. And it feels like something that could only really happen because of your perspective. And like you say, you've been shamed online a few times. So you put that into your storytelling. But in a way, did you ever feel like writing about it and making it funny was also like a way of healing?
Yeah, and I think honestly, a lot of humor that goes into my books is just making fun of something that I've overcome now and can now laugh about. So like, even like now I'm currently writing a book that's very, very dark, because a lot of people die and there's a lot of betrayal and murder and like backstabbing and stuff. But also it's very funny. There's a lot of humor. And it's just kind of like, I feel like a lot of it is like making light of, how much the world sucks and like, trauma and like betrayal from people that you cared about and you trusted, and like the like way that you kind of have to grow from those things regardless. You don't have a choice. And so I feel like once you do overcome that, it becomes something that you can laugh about. And so I feel like that is a huge portion of where like the humor in all of my work kind of comes from.
Yeah. And do you have any like favorite comedians that maybe you draw your sense of humor from? Because like for me, it's definitely I think I'm probably the only person on Twitter who likes the guy, but I really like Pete Davidson's humor. And like how he makes jokes about like a very big tragedy that you think most people wouldn't joke about, but he does it so well. And also there's a Scottish comedian, Frankie Boyle, who does a similar kind of thing. He's kind of like the Scottish equivalent of George Carlin. So imagine George Carlin, but just like way more depressed and way more Scottish. But he does the same kind of thing where he'll look at really taboo stuff like war and everything, and through making jokes about it, I feel it helps a lot of people understand those concepts in a much more accessible way than if they were to sit around watching like Parliament debates.
Yeah, I agree. I think media in general, I feel like the more you intersperse important topics into things that are fun and like enjoyable, the more people will care. Like, I love TikTok. I love some of the shit you see on TikTok as far as like social justice type stuff that's like, turned into like a parody song or something. Like, that shit is so, I feel like it makes you be like, oh wow, I actually care about this information, but oh look, in a way that's enjoyable and accessible for me. And I don't have to like suffer through like, 2 hours of people using big words I don't understand. But as far as like favorite comedians, I don't feel like I should verbally confess on camera the comedians that I appreciate. mixed bag because I feel like part of it is like, one, some of the comedians that I like are shit people, and they've come out as shit people, and like over the past like 5 years or so, and so I'm like, okay, I'm not going to talk about that. But then the rest of the comedians I like will probably be exposed as shit people in the next like 2 years. So I feel like to play it safe, I'm just going to say pass.
I mean, I'm not going to make you say anything on that, but as long as Ricky Gervais isn't on the list.
Oh, ew, no. No.
I mean, there's this one thing Ricky Gervais does in one of his specials where he's like, oh yeah, if a trans woman can say they're a woman, then I can say I'm a chimpanzee. And like, it's not funny for a star. Funny. And it's a bit like, but I thought it's not too dissimilar to Ricky Gervais saying that he's a stand-up comedian. Like, just because he identifies as one, am I supposed to say that he is one? Like, fucking hell. Like, yeah, if you can tell, I really don't like Ricky Gervais. And it's the one thing I will give America is that your version of The Office is better than the UK one.
It is. And I tried the UK one because I had so many people who were like, the UK one's better. And I was like, puts it up. Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Spoiler alert, Ricky Gervais is never coming on this show because I don't want to hear him talk about fucking whatever it is he speaks about for an hour. I mean, he's the least funny man in Britain. All right, so moving on from that, I'm just going to grab my notes up here, and just my luck, they've gone away. All right, okay. So if we can get on to talking about future projects. Now, I know you've got Cafe Con Lychee, or Lychee, that's how you pronounce it, right? I had to look that up.
So there is a debate because it's lychee or lychee, depending on like cultural, like I grew up saying lychee and then everyone gave me shit for it. So now I say lychee, but it's either one is fine.
I'm just thinking about that now. Lychee kind of sounds like someone who's leeching off of you.
Well, and the thing with lychee too is like there's different ways of spelling it, because if you spell it like, I don't even know which cultures use the Litchi spelling, but like I feel like when you look at it that way, you're like, lychee doesn't make sense. But like, I don't know. It's a complex word. Ignore it.
But anyway, we got Cafe Con Lychee, which I saw. I think you had like a fan drawn cover or something. I'm not. Was it an official cover or like?
No, that was an illustration I did while I was waiting for an actual cover.
Yeah, I'm sure I probably mentioned to you that I thought your art looked good at some point. But can you tell us anything about that? Like, is that going to follow in a similar way to Meet Cute Diary, or is it an entirely different kind of beast? Really,
it's an entirely different beast, and I think that's like one of the. I feel like that was one of like my biggest concerns was actually after but it was like for me like a week before Meet Cute Diary released, and I was like, oh shit. Everything I write is like so different from each other. I really hope people don't like hate me after like they read Meet Cute Diary and then the next book is like totally different. But so it is a lot less meta than Meet Cute Diary, but it also has a lot more social commentary. And it is, I know some people thought it was trans. It's not trans. They're both cis, but it is an interracial gay romance that kind of delves a lot into, and that one deals a lot more with like racial and cultural identity, whereas Meet Cute Diary leans a little more into like queer identity. And it's basically the story of these two boys whose parents own rival cafes, who hate each other. Actually, that one that I love, I kind of played on the enemies to lovers bit, because the one character, Theo, who is the Chinese and Japanese character, he firmly believes that they are enemies who despise each other. Meanwhile, Gabby, who is the Puerto Rican character, is like, Theo's so cool. Man, like he's so confident. So like, and so they're enemies. And like every time like Theo sees him, he's like, we're arch rivals. We're set out to destroy each other. And Gabby's like, God, I wish he was friends with me. And like it's very sad, but it's very funny. And yeah, so they're enemies who end up having to work together when a rival cafe opens up in town, so they can keep their parents' stores alive. And that is where they, of course, run into the tropes of, what happens when two guys who are both attractive and are working together fall in love, haha.
I can already imagine the hijinks now, sabotaging the croissant recipe, replacing one roast of coffee with another one. I know there's some caffeine addicts who would go mad for that shit. But the way you're describing that, like the way those two characters would see each other, are you a fan of Edgar Wright, the film director?
I don't know who that is.
So he did like Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim. He's kind of good for like that visual comedy thing. I could imagine that thing you just pitched as like being an Edgar Wright sequence. And like you see that one character who thinks they're enemies, and it's like this whole epic music and everything, and then cuts to like, oh my god, that's something I feel will be in like an Edgar Wright style wheelhouse, and he's my favorite film director, so that's already got me excited. That's coming out? That's coming out next year, right?
Yeah, summer 22.
Okay. I mean, if I can find Meet Cute Diary in a UK bookstore, hopefully I can find this one in it.
Yeah. Oh, Meet Cute Diary is going to be in. It's like Meet Cute Diary is coming to a UK version for paperback. Apparently, I just learned that.
I mean, and you're the author, and you just learned that. Wow, publishing.
I know, I love it. I'm like, oh, right. The funniest part was when I was trying to figure out the release date on Cafe Con Leche, I couldn't figure it out. I was asking around, and like my editor was like, I think it might be this date. Turns out we were both wrong. There was a different date that they had in mind that we didn't know about. So that was fun.
All right. And now we are on to the part where I assume you were probably looking forward to this the most when I sent you our little structure. Or maybe not, but so
I don't actually remember what you sent me because I have ADHD.
Fair enough. Well, we'll just roll with that. I'm just going to get into my nice little setup here. So here is my makeshift pitcher cigar. It's a vape with blueberry liquid in it. So this part of it is where I love to talk about like a dream project, like something an author could do if they had no limits, no limitations or anything like that. Whether it be like a comic, a movie, video game, screenwriting, anything. You already mentioned you did screenwriting, so maybe we'll get a cool answer for this. But have you got that dream project in your head, like something you would love to do just without any of the limitations and just go for it?
So I actually kind of started working on what I could consider my dream project. It is and I've never pitched this before, so you're getting the first look at it.
Exclusives. Fuck yeah.
Exclusive. Yeah, I've been calling it my secret project online for probably over a year now because I was trying not to like give anything away about it. But it's a web comic, and it is a dystopian society where people have like superhero powers, and it's I want to say like it's kind of like My Hero Academia, but like if My Hero Academia was way more convoluted with a lot more murder, and everything was a commentary on how capitalism is hell. And so that's basically my my pitch for it. It's and it has over 100 characters, of which about 80% are queer. So it's
My Hero Academia meets the vast epicness of Lord of the Rings. I say, this is a fantastic pitch. I would love to see that. Legit, I would love to see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally, I've been working on it for almost 2 years now, and it's basically in my downtime project. I just kind of work on it for fun. And I don't know that I will ever be able to actually encompass something that expansive in like an actual story that I can actually like give people to read, but if I ever can, that would be like a dream.
If you can find a character who dresses like this, then I'm buying like 10 copies.
Oh my god, I've already started on some of the costumes. They're good. They're real good. And and what's really fun about it is I feel like a lot of superhero stuff like is very like there's like this idea of almost like this like a cultural like design where there's like these like same like I feel like a lot of the characters use like the same like spandex suits and like this kind of mask and like like that kind of stuff where there's a lot of like similar like archetypes, I guess, that go
Marvel movies. And
it's like, and even like with My Hero, which is a Japanese show, a lot of the designs drew inspiration from American comics. So like I feel like between like Marvel and DC kind of like having that mega influence, a lot of things do kind of have like, modeled after those things. So like mine are very, very, very different than that. I made them very like, I ended up basically saying like, what would make for a really cool like cosplay / like masquerade type outfit? And that's where I got like I ended up using a lot of like ice skating like costumes and shit for like inspiration and that kind of stuff. So they're very much very different than like
that sounds really fucking cool. And like I'll say right now, as a comic book fan, one, I would read that, and two, if you ever did get to do a thing for Marvel or DC, I feel like you would fare really well in doing a story about Gambit and Rogue, the X-Men characters. Like, I feel your style's very into that.
Yeah, I'm like, I do have a special place in my heart for mutants. And also Magneto was right, but that.
I mean, I've had people say Thanos was right, so Magneto's not.
Oh no! Look, I'm only gonna say, look, Magneto was right and Killmonger was right. That's all I'm gonna say. Everything else, but that's it.
to a stretch, maybe Ultron. But maybe don't destroy half the world in trying to make your point, you stupid James Spader voiced robot.
Like the amount of like argument I want to get into about how Thanos acknowledged a problem and then was like, what's the worst way I could potentially consider solving this problem? Oh, here we go. And then made that his entire like personality and like, God.
So he's like supervillain Boris Johnson in your mind.
You don't even have to add the supervillain part. I feel like that's already a given.
I mean, if Boris Johnson actually was a supervillain, I feel like he'd be the most lame, lackluster version of the Penguin that exists. Like, take all the cool stuff of Danny DeVito's Penguin, strip it away, and give it blonde hair and a ridiculous accent. Boris Johnson. But no, like I do agree on that. Like, I'm one of the few that thinks I don't think Thanos was that compelling of a villain, if I'm honest.
He's horrible. He's horrible. Like he was like, it was just so, what's the word I'm like? It was lazy. I felt like he was so lazy, like, of a concept. You know what I mean? Like, there was just, God, there's so many villains with depth, and he was not one of them. He was a loser.
Yeah, and that's why I prefer Spider-Man villains the most out of Marvel villains, because all of them have depth. Like, Doc Ock has depth. The Vulture had depth. I want to say Mysterio had depth, but that was just Jake Gyllenhaal, if I'm honest. But yeah, I'm getting off on a tangent now. But I think that's pretty much going to wrap us up now. This has been an absolute joy and pleasure to talk to you. So we're just going to plug your socials and any relevant info for listeners. Anything you've got coming up, feel free just to plug away.
Yeah, okay, so I am on Twitter at Emery Lee Who. I am on Instagram at Emery Lee Books. And my website is emeryleebooks.com. I am on Instagram at Emery Lee Who, but that is my art account. Please don't tag it in book posts as my art account. And I'm also on TikTok, which I mostly like things from. That's also at Emery Lee Who. As far as projects, I have Cafe Con Leche, which is my Enemies to Lovers Cafe rom-com, and that comes out May 10th, 2022. I also am part of an anthology called All Signs Point to Yes, and it is an astrology-based romance anthology, and that comes out, I believe, May 31st, 2022. And then I'm also in Transmogrify, which is a all-trans magic anthology, and that comes out in 23. I don't think there's an exact release date yet.
Oh, there you go. And Instagram, something you just mistakenly said. Take note of that, because that sounds like a superhero version of a very sweet old lady.
I was thinking Instagram would be like if like grandmothers had their own version of Instagram, just so that you wouldn't have to like give your grandmother your actual Instagram where you're posting like booty shots.
Okay. Oh, I'm gonna have to get that out of my mind. Oh, I'm gonna have to go and look at some open wounds after this. Jesus. I mean, I would not want my gran getting in on that. No. Well, I mean, she can do what she wants. I'm not going to follow it. God, how did we start from talking about crafting? Grandmothers and booty shots. Oh, that is just the kind of show this is. But Emery, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a great starter for season 2 of Creator's Conscience. I'd be happy to take a look at anything else that you got writing if you ever want to use me as a beta reader. Just going to throw that out there. But I will buy it as well.
Well, I will definitely keep you in mind.
And what we've learned in this episode, we have learned that comedy is fun in YA. You should do more of it. Don't take yourself so seriously. Stop putting marginalized characters into boxes. They don't like that. And claustrophobia is a real thing. So, with that in mind, I would highly recommend Meet Cute Diary. It's one of the most fun reads that I have had this year. And you can find it on iBooks or Book Depository or any bookstore, unless you're in the UK, which I still can't find it. I reckon they're hiding it from me. That's probably the thing. The guy at the bookstore definitely has something against me ever since I made him search for an old Conan book. But once again, thank you so much for coming on. And listeners, if you like this, please leave a comment below or let me know what other guests you would like to see on Season 2 of The Creator's Conscience. Thanks for listening, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.